He'll be back in a second. Yeah.
Brian was gonna Zoom.
Yeah.
Sure. I know, yeah.
Then the guy in the crew cab white ticket Ford, blew the stop sign. I almost pulled up my hand.
Wow.
He can't hear. Okay.
I'm pointing at the stop sign. So, yeah, thanks for.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe heads up.
Now can you hear?
Can you hear us, Brian?
He's mute. Should move it location right over back to the
Okay. No?
He can't hear.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try this.
Now can you hear?
Hello? Can you hear us, Brian?
Can you guys hear me? I can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Okay, that's
I
wrong.
can't hear you guys at all.
How about now?
Can you hear us
Test,
now?
test.
I also can't read lips
Hello, hello.
or hands.
No sign language.
Well, it's cut. Does it work
You want me
now?
to call in and just put your phone on the desk there and I can hear what you guys are saying?
No. Devin's working on it.
Speaker. Okay, so it should be that one. Okay.
It was not muted.
I'm muted. No, not muted.
No. Can you hear us, Brian? No.
Of course not.
Can you hear us now, Brian? Oh, you just turned the mics off. How about now, Brian? Hello?
Nope. Nobody touched anything.
There's green lights going into the soundboard. for
Yeah.
Some, when you speak, I can see the
Yeah.
lights on the piano booth.
Yep.
Coming out of there. Yeah.
Input.
Okay.
Oh, there we
Can you hear
go.
us?
That's not good. You want to be the both, you want those both to be the same.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh. There.
Can you hear us, Brian? Hello? No. Oh, and now he's gone. Walking away.
I remember trying to get on from Phoenix. Why?
Hello, hello.
I was gonna be zooming tonight too. I'm glad that.
Yeah.
There's a baby.
We're a
Get a little bit of cuteness in our meeting, that's good.
Indeed.
Yeah, she is a cutie. Her name is Roz.
Roz, huh?
Yeah, Rosalind.
Smartest thing ever.
Was that?
Smartest thing ever. Hey.
Yeah, starting to string some words together.
Who is?
Winlock. Right? That's what they're talking about is this property right there.
I don't know exactly what I'm saying.
Right at 63. There's that.
Yeah.
So that's what that makes them talking about is.
This one on this side of the highway.
Yeah, that's the side
That's
of,
a piece
that's,
Well, it looks to me like somebody bought the
Hello,
place
hello?
next to that. because they're
Hello?
clearing the land and they're like crazy.
next to this, like here.
Yeah.
Where that old nursery was,
So the old dock-
Kelly bought that.
Who did it?
The guy that owns the shop right next door.
Oh, that
So
guy.
Yeah, that guy bought all that. He
Devin,
bought that piece.
I can
next
just
to it.
call him and put him on speaker.
I don't know what the-
I don't know why he bought
Yeah,
it.
work in
He
council.
bought it.
They just cleaned it
Yeah.
up.
Monday.
Yeah, he's, I mean, yeah,
They cleaned it up. It's good.
We got it.
yeah,
No,
he's been
we're gonna-
clearing
I'm
out,
gonna
but that's who
just put him on
bought that.
speakerphone.
We can hear him. Help.
Yeah. we need to Stop that. CJ all the way over here.
Yeah.
Well, hello.
I'm gonna put you on speakerphone.
That's 2.5 miles.
All right.
Does that work?
It's even less growing.
Okay.
I measured it with a truck.
Perfect, thank you.
3 miles exactly.
It's in the survey.
Yeah.
Ready to go?
Hi.
I think we're ready to go.
All right, thank you and welcome to the Thursday, July 21st, 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission, City of Toledo. We start out with the flag salute. Cindy, would you lead us? please?
Surely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will make a motion to accept last meeting's minutes.
I second it.
Any discussion on that? Brian, any discussion on last week's, last meeting's minutes?
Nope, I third.
Okay, with no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. I think part of your agenda packet has business licenses as well. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Can I hear a motion to approve these licenses?
I make a motion to approve these business licenses.
Get a second?
I'll second that.
Anybody have any discussion on these?
That's just a general question. So Devin, the coffee service down at exit 59, why are they applying for a city business license?
Because it's Toledo.
Oh,
It's Toledo.
It's still,
Yeah, it's considered Toledo, even though it's not state limits.
gotcha. Okay. That was my only question.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, opposed? Motion carries. Now, item 3 on the new business calendar is impact statements for police, fire, and school. And that has to do with developments within the city limits of Toledo. And I do believe that the school has at this time either sent or is prepared to send a letter to the applicants for the current development with regards to their position on the schools. And I think that that is going to be somewhat different than what the developer was indicating had been transmitted. So it'll be interesting to get their feedback on that letter.
The reason I brought this agenda item to the table is actually to request city council, to make a recommendation to city
Yes.
council to task basically public services to add some meat to what we might look like in 5 years, what we might look like in 7 years, and what those services need in order to support that. And I think in hearsay of what I've heard about those, what the school is preparing, there's not a whole lot of meat to that. So, my intent would be for these services to, how many additional fire trucks are they going to need over the course of X number of years? How much more personnel, dollars?
I think as part of that recommendation, I fully agree with you, is that they sort of have to pretend in the future,
Mhm.
but at the same time, the finite areas of what we have to develop are there,
Mhm.
and they will be developed. And so they're going to have to sit down and make an estimated, an educated estimate of what their future needs are going to be once those are fully developed out.
Mhm.
And so could I hear a motion to ask the city council to request impact statements from the police, fire, and school organizations?
I will make that motion. So I move that we recommend that the city council ask for impact statements from city services.
And hopefully make that clear that this is not a one paragraph. Gee whiz, we may need another tire truck. I mean, they're going to have to, somebody's going to have to sit down and do some actual planning.
Right. So let's get a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brian.
So now that it's been moved and seconded and there's a motion on the table for discussion.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
Just there are several different ways for those organizations to comment throughout the approval process. The most common way would be through the SEPA process. So when an application for development comes in, if it's not a requirement in code, you have some loose requirements in your code, which is how we were able to require that of the applicant that's currently submitted a development application. We require them to submit something from the schools. And that was just based on one line in there that says that they have to demonstrate how they're impacting public services. So that was how we looped them in. So I think if you were suggesting something to council, maybe it would be to revise the development code to require applicants to submit those impact letters, put the burden back on the applicant so that they have to go out to these public service agencies and submit that with their application. And then make that a requirement of applying, and then it can be a completeness item. So if you do that, then you're pushing it up to the front end of the process. You're making them contact all these agencies ahead, and you can include schools, police, fire, utility districts, whatever else serves the area, even sometimes refuse haulers and trash services.
Well, my concern on that is that we're going to get the same sort of response that we just did from the schools, which has no meat whatsoever.
Schools are in an interesting spot in the state of Washington because they're required to educate all the students in their district. So they have a legal requirement to accept students, which puts them in a very bad negotiating position when it comes to new development.
It does, but them educating us as to what their capacities are does give us the leverage during the process to make sure that we take care of those shortages. And I think that's what we're really looking for. I don't disagree that it should be handled on a case-by-case basis from the applicant's point of view. I would prefer that each agency, though, look to the future themselves. So when an applicant comes to them, they have an idea of what's happening, and we don't start the ball rolling all over again. Another guy said, well, another developer coming in, now I got to start this process all over again.
So those are, each one of those public agency districts is required to do capital facilities planning for a planning period. Whether or not they could foresee the fact that development was going to occur, and now it is, it would be interesting to look at some of those, and through the development review process, we have to look at what they've assumed in there. So part of what staff will do when they're evaluating an application is we'll figure out what was in their capital facilities plan. So when the applicant says there's adequate police and fire, we'll go to the police and fire plans and see if they planned on this area developing. If they did, then it's already contemplated in their future budgeting and their forecasting. If they did not contemplate this development, then we can go back and say this wasn't contemplated and here's the additional conditions that you're going to need to have. But in the case of the schools, we can also do that, even though that they have a legal obligation to educate the students in their district. They don't, the city doesn't have an obligation to approve development that's going to result in less education for students via larger class sizes or whatever else the school district might be forced to do to accommodate students that they haven't planned on. So there are several catches throughout this process where we can implement those changes. And so I just want to make sure that as you're making a motion to council, that you're aware of the different places. I mean, you could ask council to task you all with updating the development code so that those are requirements for submittal of an application, and that would put it at the front and it would put the burden on the applicant. You could, in your motion, just recommend that council or ask council if they could direct staff to compile all the capital facilities plans from all those agencies and give those to you all for your review. We have to look at those anyway when we're looking at development when they come in, so we're going to need them. Or you could just ask council to direct staff to be sure that through the SEPA process that staff reaches out to each of those agencies specifically and gets input. They're invited, they're noticed through the SEPA process anyway, so they get that notice, but having council direction to staff then would provide just a little bit more clarity in that, yes, we're going to direct our staff to reach out to these agencies specifically, get their input on development applications through the SEPA process.
Okay, so before I amend this motion, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like what you're describing is a reactionary process. I mean, reactionary steps to this process that you would get to a certain point in the process before we ask, where we know this is coming, and why shouldn't our public services be thinking and grinding on this now?
So maybe then your motion isn't for something that's development related.
Mhm.
Maybe what you're asking council to do is to, because the city has the planning authority for the region, right? So you are the ones that coordinate planning within your city limits. So for those districts and agencies that serve you, you could facilitate regional planning to make sure that they are contemplating future annexations, and that would be a different motion. This is more along the lines of updating your comprehensive plan and coordinating that regional effort to do that.
Well,
I'm not sure I don't agree with you on that. In that respect, in that I'm so fearful that if the council goes out and asks the agencies to do that planning, that we're going to get something like we got back originally from the school.
well,
And I want to head that off
mhm.
beforehand. I'd like them to prepare a comprehensive future checklist for us of how they plan to deal with this.
Well, and to on the tail end of that, we just got finished, about a year ago on our 20-year comprehensive plan, and getting any sort of data out of these agencies was next to nothing. So that comprehensive plan doesn't have anything in it of any substance.
But in those cases, though, growth was identified for these future areas in the comprehensive plan. You
No.
assume some
Not
level.
Not really.
Not really.
So maybe that's it. Maybe your comprehensive plan needs to be updated to assume a level of growth, because as you have these urbanized areas that are capable of supporting, several lots per acre, and if you're going to take in another couple hundred acres, that's going to be a big impact.
Mhm.
And then as you bring on more commercial development and get that commercial redevelopment, that too should be projected in your capital facilities planning and your comprehensive planning. So then that gives those agencies and those districts something to react to.
Mhm.
So maybe your motion is more city driven in requesting that council update the comprehensive plan to include development of these areas, and then to include forecasting from these districts as how they will serve that. So that would be yet another update of your comprehensive plan, but you can do that as frequently as once a year.
Right.
So, but if you never contemplated this growth in your comprehensive plan, then that would be the request of council then, is to update the comprehensive plan to include growth forecasts. And we can use planning tools to make assumptions about how these things are going to develop even before an application comes in.
Mhm.
So that may be I'm trying to fish here for what you all are looking to do to help guide you into the best.
That's what I was thinking. Are we looking for a general point, I mean,
Mr. Mayor?
Like the-
Can I say something? On the comprehensive encouragement for the expansion of the growth, they did 1 out of 3 schools. They've now got allotment for 200 more new students at the remodeled high school. They did not allow for middle school growth or grade school growth, which now I'm hearing from the public that they should have had that 2 million that they turned back for taxes for the next 4 years. Could have been spent for portable classrooms at both the middle school and the grade school for the growth that is coming.
Right.
Yes, they're not all going to be high school students at 200. If we have 100 homes, you figure 2 kids per household, that's 200 kids. Well, we're not figuring all 200 high school, but at least they did pinch a little bit of knowledge in there for the growth for the high school when they remodeled it for 200 more extra students.
Yeah, and
That's the last I heard.
right, and the fire section of the comprehensive plan is an asset list.
There's
I mean, there's-
nothing about fire or police or nothing else in there that's people didn't think about.
Well, I like that idea, Todd, is that really the motion is revolving around the comprehensive plan, and one of the elements is to request, what these agencies.
I've made an informal request to Chris Rust for that information, but I would like to have us nudge to make that a formal request.
And I know
So and I asked him, what is your budget to grow the other 2 schools?
Right. And we have, and unfortunately, police is a unknown at the moment.
And
So-
Fire District 2, is that,
Yeah. that is-
Fire districts and school districts are all required by the state to have some sort of 5-year plan in place for budgeting and capital planning. So they at least have to have something, but if the city's comprehensive plan never forecasted any growth,
right,
then there would be no reaction from those agencies
Exactly.
because status quo is fine by them. All they have to do is maintain and update equipment as they need to continue service. So so maybe the motion is to try and to get some forecasted growth population from at least the foreseeable future for the next 5 years for the current development and the annexed areas that are likely to be annexed, with some other background growth assumption for downtown. And then to get input from those agencies and to evaluate if a comprehensive plan amendment is needed to update based on that. So if you have council task staff with doing all that research and we work on that with planning commission, probably for the next couple of months, then that may result in an updated comprehensive plan.
hey, staff,
right, because we have to know what the capacity is of what we have now before these developers can come in and know what the capacity that they can fill.
We did get that for the comprehensive plan, but there was just nothing beyond that. So we had whatever was current a year ago, just numbers.
Well, the current status for the grade school and middle school is capacity.
right,
Yeah.
Right, it's at 10% over capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see if I can amend this without tripping over myself. Go ahead.
go ahead. I'm not sure how, without a change to the comprehensive plan, I don't know how we could move forward on any develop where we're already sitting in a situation where we cannot educate them
You're right.
without a detrimental effect to the current students.
You're right.
If you're over capacity on elementary and middle school, how do you justify that? It's like okaying a development when you have no sewer capacity. I mean, you can't do it. And I agree that we ought to attack this under your motion in the comprehensive plan avenue. But looking forward, I mean, we would have to hustle to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. Yes, sir.
I can give you an example. My daughter's class was 110, the biggest ever to go through Toledo. They had to compensate with extra classrooms and extra rooms and extra books, and extra thing every year that they moved up. And
Well,
they all graduated for 12 years. It was a nightmare.
Oh, I understand they're using a library for the 5th grade class now because, and so they have no library.
Right.
So again, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Taking a lot of liberty here, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. So the comprehensive plan motion will get those wheels in motion So that way you'll be able to develop an idea of what you have in your inventory and what you have coming for demand. What you're talking about is approval of a development that's specifically applied for that. And that has to go through a review process and it has to be reviewed by the standards that are in place when they file a complete application, which this applicant is very, very close to achieving that. So the idea that you would be able to get rules in place that would substantially affect this development is probably not going to happen in time, absent some sort of a moratorium, realizing that your development code and your utilities and everything is way out of alignment with this level of development, and findings to support a moratorium at the council level. That is probably the only action that you can delay development with. And even that has specific requirements that you get resolve these issues within short order, really. So it would be my recommendation that you look at ways to condition this development for approval based on its merits. The applicant's going to have to demonstrate that they can provide for adequate public services through this process, which means they're going to have to work with the schools. And the schools can't necessarily force that hand, but the city can. And you can require that through your approval process because it has an impact on public services. So even though your code, you might not have been able to forecast this, the applicant's burden is to demonstrate that they can achieve a benchmark that's not going to have a significant adverse impact on police, fire, schools, and utilities.
Granted.
So through that development, staff can develop a staff report, present it to you all for your review and approval at a future meeting when it comes to that level. And then you all can chew on the merits of that and see if you agree with staff's recommendations. So staff will come up with recommendations based on what the applicant submits, and we'll prepare a staff report and you'll have all the information that you need. And we will go out and have to get information from those districts to find out if they have capacity to serve this development and what they need to serve it if they need something more. And then we'll develop conditions of approval that will support that. If we can do that legally through the process, right? We have to stay within a box of what we can require. We can only require them to mitigate for their impact. So if you need a new fire station, one development probably isn't going to push that trigger, but they would have to maybe contribute towards a new fire station in the future. So those are the tools that we can use through the SEPA review process and through the staff report and approval process. And then it all comes to you so that you can evaluate what staff has done. So on the development level, that is all still going to happen. That's something that's coming towards you in a package of approval authority, and you have the authority to review and approve that. You have to be a little bit prescriptive because they're not asking for any sort of variance at this point, but they may. Some of the discussions on the roads are leading toward a possible variance to lot sizes. Some of those things, so you may get more discretion if they ask for variances or other things.
Well, and
I would feel a lot better if they knew that we're not trying to block this.
Right.
Okay, we want it to happen, but we want it to happen the right way. And that includes getting the city of Toledo involved in the permit process, the city of Toledo involved in changing some of our land use regs, such as the roadway widths, so that we get in place the things that we want to achieve now that we've had time to digest what these developments will be or what they potentially could be. And it takes time. And I know they're in a rush. Everybody's always in a rush, but they haven't taken out a loan yet. I guess from the planning department standpoint, we're not trying to stonewall this thing. What we want to do is do it right and make sure that the city has in place the things it wants to have in place before it begins large scale development, which is look like what's going to happen. And I think that's the end of my comment.
So I think staff's recommendation would be that you look toward establishing future planning based on projected growth, and you do that through an evaluation of a comprehensive plan. So maybe that's the immediate motion. For the development specific concerns, because this is a large development and it's triggered a lot of reactionary type of things, we're going to have to work through that through the approval process because they have a right to have their application processed. You have an established process, you have a procedure. They've
Absolutely.
submitted an application. They've done their work to achieve that. I mean, now they're nearly complete. They could be completed anytime really. So they're going to be vested to the standards in place today. You're not, absent a moratorium or something else, you're not going to get to change the road standards ahead of this.
I guess my question is how do we approve a subdivision that has no water and no sewer?
You can't, but you can condition them to provide water and sewer and make them do it.
I think that's what he's talking about with these
Yeah.
other things as well.
The mitigation issues.
You can condition them to mitigate for their impacts.
Okay.
And that's what you can do through the approval process. You can't invent new standards as they're going through the review process, but what you can do is you can find that your standards are inadequate for the way they're being used based on public health and safety and welfare. You can say that they're not adequately mitigating, that they're going to have a significant adverse impact, and therefore you can't approve their development, even though they've met the rules. The impact is too significant and there's no mitigation for it, so you can't approve it at that point either. So there's
Okay.
all of those findings that you can make on a development specific. And I think you'll have an opportunity to review that without any special motions to council. You already have the authority to review and approve this. You already have the authority to evaluate staff's recommendation on whether or not they provided adequate mitigation. You already have all that authority. And that will come to you for your approval as the subdivision when we get to that point. The other bigger concern is best addressed by an evaluation of what you have for developable land in your urban growth area, what you have within your city, figuring out what capacities are there, and then compiling that information, providing it to all the districts and asking them, are you envisioning this in your comprehensive planning? And can you update your comprehensive planning to include this? And then where does that lead the city? Do we need to then update our comprehensive plan? Do they need to update their impact fees? Do we need to have a proportionate share of a new fire station or new fire engine or truck or apparatus of some sort? Do we need to have that in the budget? And do we need to be collecting an impact fee to support that? That'll all be informed by that larger comprehensive planning process. So you'll get both of what I think I'm hearing you say you want.
Okay.
And thank you for letting me just talk through this too. I appreciate not following the strict rules of order here.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty informal group, so.
So do you want to make your motion again?
I will amend my motion, I think. So the amended motion would be to ask city council for a reevaluation of our comprehensive plan as it pertains to our agencies and services and
future development.
and as it pertains to our urban growth area and potential annexed areas.
Here a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion?
No, please.
Brian?
I third it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Okay, unfinished business. I guess it's unfinished. During discussions we've had in the last couple of meetings, we've discussed our concerns over some of our development code ordinances, and that we feel that they're inadequate for future development. And among those were street and road standards, adopting the Washington Department of Transportation standards for construction, dealing with duplexes, permit timelines, short subdivisions, etc. And last year, when we were revising our land development codes, we went forward and recommended to the city council that they adopt certain measures that we had recommended, and they did so. In recent meetings, we discussed changing our road standards to what we consider a safer road width. And we also took on the task of looking at the permit timelines and found them wholly inadequate based on what they currently are. and made some recommendations with regards to changing those and extending the time periods for review. Todd, you've made some comments with regards to the SEPA process involving certain of those changes to our land development agreement. And I was hoping that you could educate the board on the process and where we go from here.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to do that. I believe in your packet, there's a couple of quick printouts that I did. There's the SEPA guide for project applicants and the SEPA guide for lead agencies. SEPA is a state environmental procedural review, basically, that compiles all the information about the anytime the city issues a license in the form of a permit or approves budgeting or funding or approves a purchase or anything that has a potential adverse impact to the environment or land, then you have to go through a SEPA non-project action. So the non-project actions mean we're not going to physically disturb anything right now, but what we're doing is going to change how projects could physically disturb things in the future. So you're getting input from state agencies and tribes, other local governments, all of the districts have a right to comment through that as well, school districts and others. So when you're passing these changes, the non-project SEPA process is there to help to provide you with more information before you make any final decisions on whether or not what's been proposed is going to have the least environmental impact and accommodates state agencies and federal agencies, tribes, local districts, and all of everybody else that gets to comment through that. So the two things here that we have is, and there's also, I believe Devin put together the flow chart that you have for your subdivision approval process, which I don't have in my packet. Let me get a copy of that one.
What?
It's down here.
So, so when planning commission is making changes to things like road standards, the non-project SEPA is required because those standards apply to how much pavement gets put down, how much sidewalk gets put down, and all of that has a cumulative environmental impact.
Sure.
So as you're requiring wider streets, you're having you're providing for better health and safety because you're providing for better through lanes for travel and better safety for pedestrians, presumably, and better emergency vehicle access. But at the same time, you're also having an increase of stormwater runoff and other things. So that has to be considered through a non-project SEPA. You're not building anything, you're not having a direct impact, but the non-project piece, you're changing the way those are going to be. And you're changing them. When you get through that process, you can acknowledge through the SEPA process that yes, we're going to have impacts to, stormwater runoff. We're going to be increasing those, but for the better public good, it's all worth it because the outcome is a better, more livable product for public health and safety. And it's the minimum amount that's required. So you do all those findings through a SEPA process. If you're changing permitting timelines, those don't require a non-project SEPA because they don't result in the issuance of a permit or a license or money being spent to change the environmental impact. So there, I guess if you think about it in the way of, is what we're doing have a potential to impact the environment indirectly, then that's the SEPA non-project. The SEPA project actions are usually when you're actually going out and building something. So, and that SEPA process is what subdivisions have to go through. It's what building permits have to go through, and so on. And any place that you're doing development basically anymore requires some sort of a SEPA process. There are some minor thresholds for new construction that don't rise to the level of that. You can do a parking lot of up to 15 spaces. You can move dirt up to it's 500 cubic yards, I think, now for the grading permit. So you can move a pretty significant amount of dirt before you get into a SEPA process, but most development subdivisions and such move more than that when they do projects. So so that's the difference between the SEPA, that's the SEPA process in a nutshell, and the non-project and project versions of SEPA specifically. Do y'all have any questions about the SEPA process and what it is?
No, I'm looking back at some of the things that we did that I'm trying to confirm to myself that were non-SEPA issues, which were the timelines on the application process, which we did adjust.
But it hasn't been put before council.
They haven't been put before council yet. Okay. I fully understand the roadway because you're increasing the amount of impervious square footage that will have an impact. So that would require the SEPA. Now one of the things we did is we changed lot sizes. We took 8,000 square foot lot minimums and made them 4,000 square foot lot minimums. For the purpose of essentially allowing folks downtown who have tiny homes to subdivide their lots, be able to build a second home or sell the lot for another home. And I'm not sure whether that would be a SEPA issue or not until building permit time.
So as an action though, that change in policy could have an adverse impact on the environment by increasing density. So there you're allowing potentially smaller lots and more development per square foot within the city. So that one would be a SEPA non-project action.
Okay, now that we've already approved though, and the council's approved. So what does that do to that?
Well, I mean, the way to fix that is to go back and redo it, basically, to go back through the process to circulate SEPA, to get the input from SEPA, to recognize, okay, we got this input from all the agencies, or we got no input. So you're either going to then change your action or you're going to have the same action. But what state SEPA policy and what the state rules say is that you shouldn't take a final action on something that's going to have an environmental impact until you have the benefit of the SEPA process.
Okay.
So the way to get yourself back upright in that would be to go back and just go through the SEPA process, and hopefully you reach the same outcome and you don't have to. But if you did, you could amend code. You could say, look, this came up through the SEPA process, so make a different recommendation to council and they could adopt different changes.
See, the caveat to that is the fact that we also reduced lot sizes from 8,000 to 6,000 square feet where the new development wants to be, which allows for more lots, which is a SEPA process issue.
It is.
So where do we go from there?
Well, I mean, the fact that you haven't gone through SEPA for that change would be another reason to pause that development, because they're utilizing standards that the city maybe hasn't followed the right SEPA procedures for. So you could pause them while you do that. You could just point out, oops, we made a mistake and we're going to go back and reconcile it. That does put the city in a bad spot because you all have adopted things that you should have gone through the process. So, you know, the developer may have issue with that. But the other thing to do is just to make sure that we get through a SEPA process quickly on that, and that it happens before you approve the development, or that we get up to a point where that development is coming forward for review at about the same time as that development code is also going through a SEPA process. So we could do those concurrently and take care of it while they're in process. They have a review period now that's going to take place, and they're going to have to provide more information from the utilities. So they've got some time to address that. So you could fix it while they're doing that.
Okay. Now I've filled out a lot of SEPA applications, but I've not run them through the process from that side. So is that something that we're going to get some help on?
I can assist with developing non-project SEPAs, and then I can work with Devin. She's got a publication list. I mean, I do this for the city of Kalama as well. So
okay.
I'm familiar with the publication process and the way it works and the agencies. As long as you have a list that you can find measure notification.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
So I would suggest then maybe a result from this might be, well, I guess, I think council always has to direct staff. So I guess it would be a motion to council to initiate a SEPA process for those codes that had an environmental impact that have been put forward in the last period of time. And then maybe to, I don't know if it's necessary to reveal those or if we can just go with them for now, because there's no other early development that's happening. So I don't know if there's anything that's going to come as a negative result of that. I think we can reconcile and get the process done in the next couple of months. And then-
Okay,
and then bring that
I don't think there's any other changes we made that were the CEPA.
There's an issue with duplexes that I think was a mistake that went through, where you can actually put a duplex also on a 4,000 square foot lot.
We actually.
We actually
motion,
changed that.
And I believe that council,
Yeah.
was that in front of
I don't recall
council,
seeing
Devin? That
You
changed.
guys have just motion to change it.
And then didn't,
You guys motioned to change the lot size for duplexes to the 6,000 square feet.
right,
So if we change from 4 to 6
And from 6 to 9. But what I think.
and 6 to 9 in new construction areas, we're actually having less environmental impact than we normally would.
But a change.
But it's
But
it's
still
still
more
change.
than it was before the non-CEPA approved change.
right.
Got it.
The
But we
still
need to do a
original lot
CEPA.
sizes,
All those
right.
bundled together. and get
Right.
us to one.
So we can do a code amendment. We can bundle all those together into one SEPA. We can say, here's all the things that we're changing.
Mhm.
And we don't have to do multiple SEPA processes. That may result in one of those getting snagged up while we're resolving state comments or agency comments on a different one.
Mhm.
So where you're increasing density and in other cases decreasing density, the decrease may get held up because somebody has an issue with the increase if you do them all together in the same process. But from a procedural standpoint, and I did see in your council packet that Devin put in there, the way code changes should occur. So normally what would happen is you all would deliberate on what you want. Staff would create a version of the code that comes forward. You all would say, yes, this looks right. And then staff would do the SEPA review process before you took final action. So then we go back and do our work, do the public noticing and all that about here's what's changing. Get the SEPA process done, have a result of that, and then bring back a staff report saying this stuff did or did not. These agencies commented and here's staff's recommendation, and then you all would take final action and then forward that recommendation up to council. And then council would have the final authority to adopt it into code or not based on your recommendation. So that's the way the process generally is supposed to work. So we're here as staff to support you all and take forward the changes that you all want to make. But the SEPA process relies on staff and it takes a month to get through that.
Okay,
So if you were to decide something in one planning commission meeting, the SEPA process is a 28-day process, so there's not really time for staff to put together all the, if you're just today compiling what you want, then it's going to take us a week or two to get the staff report out and the SEPA done and all that. So then in that case, you wouldn't be able to come back at your next planning commission meeting and take action because it's only a month away. So that would be the month after that, we go on that agenda typically. So you've got about a 2-month delay when you're
Except
doing
for the part where they're
something.
gonna start meeting more often.
well, and that's actually one of the reasons we extended some of the timelines and our permit review process was the fact that we started looking at when we meet. And in worst case scenarios, the time could elapse during the time when, after we met last time and before we meet the next time,
Mhm. And overlapping council.
and overlapping council meetings.
So in the SEPA guidance for lead agencies, the project actions and non-project actions are both defined in there. So you can see a little bit more detail on that than what I provided you for reading.
Yep.
So that'll give you more of a flavor in the future for, are we issuing the license here? Are we changing rules that are going to affect the way and the state refers to permits as licenses. So
I guess the one important point I want to make, though, is that I think we've established that changing the timelines for permit processing is a non-SEPA issue.
right.
And therefore, I think the motion that we made prior, or the recommendation we made to council prior, should be made an agenda item on the council's business.
So it was recommended by council to change timelines. And on June 6th, and then planning commission motion to change them on the 16th.
Of June.
Yeah.
Right, so it should have been in council's agenda in July. Because we made,
Well-
we actually specifically
Yeah.
made the timeline changes
So-
in
so
that
that-
meeting.
That happened maybe because of my input too. What I was talking with Devin about in that regard was there a broad public notice about changing the code? So there's, the SEPA aspect is one of them. That's a legal requirement that you have to do. From a local community standpoint, you always want to make sure that you have, if you're making a big change that's going to impact a lot of people, and a lot of people get building permits. You know, people are putting up sheds and fences and other things that require permits, and if you're changing those timelines, just from a, from a public involvement standpoint and from an open process standpoint, you want to make sure that everyone knows you're changing them and they have an opportunity to speak before you make the changes.
Well, we knew,
So
yeah, we knew that at the time, and we're
Okay.
planning on
A
a public hearing.
a public hearing. Okay, so
So-
basically, instead of recommending the change, you're recommending that it be set for a public hearing at planning commission.
Yeah.
Because-
And I believe that's what we did. Well, maybe-
And that was why I said, you know, before council takes final action on this, we may want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the amount of public process that we've gone through
Mhm.
before council adopts these changes, and then you all might have to deal with the outfall from all your neighbors saying, what did you do to me?
I think I think we were very aware that there needed to be a public hearing portion of it. We weren't sure if it needed to come after council or before council.
So for a procedural code change, for a change that, if you're acting in a legislative capacity and recommending legislative changes, which this is,
Mhm.
then you would have a public hearing before planning commission, and then council would have one before council. Typically, that's the way it works.
Okay.
If you're doing quasi judicial approval, as you will with the subdivision approval, then the state rules say that you're limited to one public hearing. So you all have chosen to do that at the planning commission level. So you all will get the public hearing here, and then you'll forward your recommendation on to council, who will consider your recommendation in a closed, not open to the public testimony. They can choose to reopen it if they want to, which is kind of a little bit of it kind of takes away from that. The council can always choose to reopen the public hearing if they deem necessary.
Mhm.
But typically what had happened is you would do the public hearing here, you'd make the recommendation to council, council would review the record and the recommendation and then take an action on it without any public testimony. Or they might remand it back to you for additional action, or they, as I said, they could open up the record and do it there. So
Okay.
on a quasi judicial action, only one public hearing. On a legislative action, usually two public hearings, just to make sure there's that opportunity for anyone to voice concern with changes at either the planning commission or council level.
So we need to set up for public hearing for the next,
For the timeline changes.
the timeline changes.
And would you like staff to prepare a staff report for that, or are you pretty comfortable with the record as having good, clear direction as to what's been proposed?
I think we're pretty clear on
It
that
was-
one.
It was a pretty simple process.
Forgive me for chuckling just a little bit with staff doing this and staff doing that.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's,
Eventually that'd be staff.
so, Mr. Chair, the fact that you're allowing me to participate in your meeting the way you are is a little bit, I'm totally in violation of Robert's rules in having this dialogue with you. It's not a workshop session, it's, we're here.
Mhm.
But there is that division between the planning commission and staff.
Mhm.
We both have our responsibilities in that, so that's why I make that, even though, we're all working together, but still, it's,
Exactly.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
we have our roles and we have those divisions of duties.
Okay, other business, meeting times.
Well, this was my idea as well. So I would like to propose, I don't think it's really a motion as much as I'd like to propose that this group meet more than once a month. And I'm thinking possibly about the first and third Thursdays of each month, which gives staff 1 week between us and city council, if anything needed to be prepped. for
Oh,
city council.
we would always be following city council then.
Well, or, sure, it depends on how you want to look at the calendar.
I guess it does.
I can't do the first Thursday ever. It's our
Is
board
there a
meeting.
first
It's a
something,
board-
is there a first something you can do?
Just not a Thursday.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
well, it makes it cleaner if it's, the same day of the week.
right.
But I'm not
can-
wedded to Thursdays.
I'm not
particularly.
either.
Brian, do you have any
just can't do the first Monday.
Okay,
How does Wednesday sound,
I like
everybody?
Wednesdays.
does Wednesday work for
We
you?
do first and third Wednesdays?
Yeah,
Okay,
And we are gonna get another member on the commission, right? So for forum's sake.
well, we're hoping.
Okay,
The vacancy is posted.
yeah, Wednesdays work for me.
Okay, so it sounds like we're moving this group. Oh, you have a problem.
I'm not adding another meeting to my plate. That's gonna put me for a month and I'm slammed already. So if you, someone else can, I don't know if Shelley would be willing to start taking one, but I am not. That's too much for me. And that's gonna add 2 more hours onto my comp time, onto the budget, and I think I'm over at 100 hours already on comp time.
Sounds like a council show.
I don't have time as it is for personal life now, and I'm not at another meeting, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fair.
In the city of Kalama, I attend planning commission meetings on behalf of city staff, so it's
Yeah.
a service I can provide if that's something the city wants, although it does come with a fee, so.
It was just, that was my.
Always comes with a fee.
So,
Yeah, yes.
Well, that's true. I mean, nothing,
Um,
no staff work for free.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to kick this to you to maybe discuss this with Shelley and Devin and Jill and whether or not we can swing another meeting. It feels like there are huge gaps given how much is going on right now. Yeah, and it could be on the books and maybe we can cancel. I mean, if nothing's happening, then there's no reason for us to meet. But it should be on the books, in my opinion.
I don't think we can afford to have the process running so slow.
Right.
right
Well, we
now.
would have potentially would have caught this time, the permit timeline 2 weeks ago if we had gotten together. So,
I feel like we lost a month there.
so,
So as it stands right now, we have a public hearing set up for the next planning commission, third Thursday of the month.
Wednesday.
I'm sorry?
Did
No.
you say Wednesday?
Right.
well, no, that was only if we were
New one.
meeting 2 times a month.
Okay.
So I'd like to leave this with you to,
I just asked Shelley to sit in, do secretarial work at Division 2 Mayor's meeting, which is the last Tuesday of the month.
if you could come back to us saying if it's possible or not. That would be helpful.
I'll ask.
Okay. Any other business?
Well, Brian brought it up. It didn't get on the agenda. And maybe this is a question to Devin. Can we discuss the vacancy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, I've exhausted all of the people that I thought of.
And his is inside city limits.
And right, it has to be
Yeah.
a city limits resident.
I've got somebody that I'm poking and prodding.
But
That's
there's,
been on the
How's that
plan.
working out for you?
Huh?
How's that working out for you?
It's a slow process. He was on the planning commission for 20 years ago and he's already got 4 volunteer boards and he's not looking at a 5th, but
right,
we keep poking.
gently.
I mean, if it's something that we need, did we post it?
It's been posted for nearly a month.
Yeah, it's posted out there.
It's on the website.
Any signups?
No.
So I guess I'm
I
kind of,
don't know where else we can like. Get it
Is
out
it
there.
burden for me to ask people? Am I allowed to ask people?
it's like, yeah, oh,
I think we
absolutely.
can ask anybody.
Yeah, as long as they're in the city
As
limits.
long as they reside in the city limits, Brian.
Yeah, but can I make a Facebook post about it?
Sure, as long,
Yeah.
yeah, as long as you state city limits, sure. That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, one item that I wanted to bring up that touched on earlier is that the city of Winlock and the city of Napavine were kind enough to essentially do a data dump on how they handle the process of building permits, impact fees, and the like. And I've been going through these. And my understanding is that the city of Toledo would like to go back to handling the process of building permits through our own city rather than farming them out. I've also got rate schedules for both cities as far as for apartment buildings. They have water and sewer hookups, but we have our own schedule for those. Agreements to annex, line adjustment applications, just mobile home placement applications. A lot of things that we do not cover in our own codes because we normally not dealt with it. And from the standpoint, I'd like to see the city grow like we are going to grow, controlling our own destiny and also reaping some of the benefits of controlling that destiny. And from a building permit standpoint, the monetary rewards are tremendous as far as cash flow into the city. You're going to have expenses involved with that are going to take a bite out of some of that. But needless to say, a number of the cities that I've worked in prior have financed their complete infrastructure based on building permits. And we don't charge for grading permits that I'm aware of. Our building permit fee's been $20. That's unheard of. I mean, I paid $1,250 20 years ago in California. They should be running, closer to $3,000 to $4,000 a piece, based on the valuation of the building, what's being constructed. We have a lot of area that's going to be future commercial retail up in the north end of town. That has a whole new parameter of us being involved and having enough staff to be involved, that the city could find itself on good financial footing for all the things that we would like the city to be able to do to further the living quality for its residents. And I wanted to throw it out there because it's going to require some work to get this handled and get it in place. But if you're all in agreement, I can ask you if you're all in agreement. I think it's something we really ought to move forward on.
And this is in addition to the ongoing discussions about partnering with Winlock on their building.
Council approved that.
Well, I think our discussions with partnering with Winlock had
Pursuing it.
they pursuant to the,
They approved pursuing it. I'm not sure they approved actually making an agreement. There was no agreement in front of council.
is this with regards to using their inspectors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there are agreements in here that were provided by Napa Vine and both Winlock, which are outside consultant agreements, which would enable us to go not only to the city of Winlock or the city of Napa Vine, but outside consultants on an inspection certificates. You can go get an inspection certificate if you've got the time in the industry and you pass the test. So we're not restricted to using those two cities. Hopefully to our benefit, we find somebody that just fits the right niche for us and is willing to do the work.
And right now, we're using the county for a lot of this. Is that what?
We are using the county a lot for it.
County's taking a big chunk of it.
Yes, they do.
So the proposed,
Is there, how did Winlock find their guy? How did Napa Vine find their guy? I'd like to get somebody here permanent for Toledo to do just that. Just ask them to set up a full
I
plate.
think that's an eventual thing.
Well, when you say how you're gonna pay them, isn't that really what you're talking about here?
I'm sorry.
Is that we need money for the infrastructure to pay these people, so you're talking about raising the building fees?
Yes,
I mean, that's essentially what you're all,
yes.
the whole discussion is.
But it would be, it would be like after.
We're talking about bringing our building permit fees into
Oh,
par
absolutely.
with the rest of
But
the
here's the
county.
thing, people will pay them because they're gonna build.
right, but in the short term, it sounds like we can contract with either Winlock or Napa Vine
Yeah.
until we have our sea legs. And
What is their fee?
It's whatever their.
Typically
service-
$60 to $100 an hour plus travel
I
time.
believe Robert was sending it to Jill today of like what he charges. So that we can
Okay.
Start figuring out.
But you
He
got,
charges this, and so we need to charge this.
So if you've got a $4,000 or a $5,000 building permit fee, which would, I mean, I was paying $50,000 at Brentwood, so this is not very much money. And you take the inspector's fees out of it, there's still a big chunk of change left over.
yeah, I know that, I realize that, Steve, but what I was thinking is if we had somebody permanent to do that, pay them out of the fees that they're gonna collect anyway. We would have somebody, because I don't want to overfill his plate at Winlock or his plate at that point, whereas we were last to come on board the ship, they're not gonna take us. I don't know if they take us.
But we kind of have a carton.
Yeah, I think we're having a
We kind of have we have a
cart
chicken and egg
person
problem
deal.
on that. is
Yeah.
that- Well, right, we can't hire someone because you don't have the money to hire them.
Right.
So I think the point is that if we contract with either Winlock or Napa Vine until the coffers are full enough, and then we feel comfortable that maybe we do it on our
Then
own.
we go out and seek someone
Or
to
Vader. Or
make an
Yeah,
employee.
there could be
Right.
others, so yeah.
We could spread it amongst them. I mean, I think you get a permit in, you collect the fee, you have what you pay for the inspection services, and you farm that out, hopefully to few, right? But and then
Yeah.
potentially.
I'll tell you what, you're building 100 houses, you're gonna have a lot of inspections.
Right. Well, there again,
At some
Winlock's
point,
got permitted for 1,200 houses.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't want to be one inspector on that job.
How are we gonna get Winlock's inspector when he's doing?
But they're only
1,200
building what is it, 4 to 7,
no, it's 45 a year.
45 a year.
houses? Still. I'm
Right.
saying,
That's handled. That's reasonable.
he's got his plate full and.
Well, I'm not
and-
sure, well, I'm not sure he would be offering his services if he didn't think he could handle it.
I would hope not.
Yeah, I don't think so. You know, I mean, typically it's about 9 inspections that he's gonna handle,
Okay,
foundation, framing,
right.
Things like that.
Fine.
and L and I takes over for electrical, so it's his plate is not full yet, but he's doing 47 houses a year.
Well, I just don't want to depend on somebody that much. And if we can't get them when we need them, then we're gonna make other people mad that say, what's happening? with them?"
I think we'll
Well-
find out very quickly once we have our first 15, 20 building permits in hand,
Right.
how much we're gonna use somebody and where we're gonna be with other
At that point, we'll have
development.
some money. And at that point, we'll have some money. to
Yes.
spend. And then whether we find a contractor to help bridge the gap or something, I think this is about getting that process going.
Exactly.
Even if it doesn't end up being with Winlock.
So-
Exactly.
So Steve, what do you propose as next steps?
Well, more homework on my part. I want to talk to Brian Morris as well over in Napa Vine. And get an idea of exactly what they have in place, you know, from inception, you know, from I walk in the door and I want a building permit, or I walk in the door and I want 100 building permits. What's their process? How can we adapt it to what we have in place here in the city? And
I mean, in some cases, the process doesn't change much. It's just the fee changes.
yeah, there's some interesting fees here.
Yeah.
And the state has its own fees, so you got to pack that on too. The state gets a little bit of everything.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Should we propose to increase the building permit to council?
Well, we don't know how much we want to do that. That's what Steve was
I
saying.
kind of want to get the program
I agree with you. We
into
need to. but
the
we-
format that they can look at it and approve it or make suggestions to it, rather than just have them make a motion to increase building fees.
Yeah, I think we proposed a packet. You know, this
Or
is,
different options, you know, a different option.
well, in some cases, Steve hinted at is depending on the valuation of the property or the structure that's being built, the fee does change.
Oh, no, and that's not what I meant, but if you're proposing something to council, you want to give them like choice A, choice B, possibly.
They want a number. 2,000, that's a good number, 3,000.
Well, there could be-
Well, I think what you'll get, Mayor, is a schedule of values based on valuation. And you're gonna get the same thing for grading permits, and we don't have grading permits here. But you know, typically it's like $250 for the first 50 yards. But if you're dealing with a subdivision that's moving 50,000 yards of dirt, that doesn't qualify as that. I want to touch base with a couple of people I know that handle grading permits and find out what the usual and customary fee is, so that you're getting something intelligent back.
Plus, do I agree with that, and also looking towards the future of more businesses or houses coming in. We gotta can we adjust that building permit to 5,000 in 10 years? I don't know.
You can
I've seen more
change
cities do
your
that
fee
than you can shake a
schedule.
stick at.
It'd be your fee schedule, and that's done every year with budgets. You can
Right.
change it every year if you want to.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with somebody the other night, and it was along the lines, for a long time, it was like if you came into Toledo to build, Toledo was just lucky to have you. And
Good old boy.
well, but that has reversed. We are now the paradise that everybody seeks.
Yeah.
And they are lucky to be able to build in our city, and we should approach it from that attitude. We don't have to be arrogant or anything, but when we fix these schedules, they should be commensurate with at least the rest of the county.
Mhm.
And you should have to pay your fair dime to come live here.
We should have a city center, a city building that isn't 20 years in arrears.
Exactly.
I mean, it should look nice when you get here. It should.
Some of my parents stated here, what are you talking about?
I understand.
Yeah. That's what they did too.
So, I mean, I think the point
Say
is,
home.
I think the point is that we're leaving a lot of revenue on the table,
Yeah.
a lot,
And suffering from it.
and suffering from it. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Devin
Just
should,
told Devin, if we do it every year, we just won the lottery.
Yeah.
The last full.
well, I mean,
That's
it,
just being a little
yeah,
ridiculous, but we are way down below the.
yeah, we should,
scale.
I mean, as a city, we should be getting to the point where Devin isn't concerned about comp time in order to add a meeting.
Yeah,
For the city. I mean,
But that's what's happening because.
well, we're
still-
starving ourselves.
We are.
So that, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, back in the
So-
day, it worked, you know, it wasn't,
But
you
not
know, there was
now.
less workload. so it was
absolutely.
Okay.
absolutely. Yep. So, but it, you know, there's potential here
Yeah,
for
yeah.
fully staffed Toledo
And
City
I'll
Hall.
look back on the council minutes notes, because I thought they approved. You go half a line, or not half a line.
There was no contract, there was no
I thought it was to pursue it.
to pursue it.
And we did pursue it, and Winlock is not interested in a partnership, but they were open to an interlocal agreement where they
Yeah.
would contract out for fee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there is
Okay,
no
so
contract.
That was the next step then.
Yeah. Yeah, so we need a contract, basically.
Or we didn't find him.
Huh?
Trey wrote the Durango contract, now I guess you're gonna have to write a building inspector contract.
That was like 2 lines.
Yeah, well,
So we don't need
Whatever
a
works,
motion
right?
for what? You're gonna research this and get back to us at the next
Yes.
planning meeting.
Put it
Okay,
on the agenda for next meeting.
yes.
So Steve, do you think we'll make a lot of new people that not in housing development or any place like that, and they have houses here in town, when they go to buy a building permit, and it's gonna be $3,000 compared to $20?
No, but
Well,
I'm
it-
just saying, the county is taking
Well, wait a second.
County's taking-
$100. They won't be doing it anymore.
I know, I understand that.
It would be much, much, much cheaper than if they were going to build a brand new house. Because it would be in relative to
Yes.
what the worth of the structure they're
I
building.
just want to start getting a bigger chunk of the apple
Amen.
Yeah, give
and
it-
keep it in our
We want
city.
the whole lot.
Put
Yes.
some money back
Yeah.
into our city for growth, because it's coming.
We never get the
Yes.
whole apple because the state takes.
They don't take that much. You know, and
We want
it's
as
an-
much
it's-
apple as we
just-
can
just
It's
get.
an
bite or-
add-on.
just a
It's an
bite or two.
add-on. Yeah, just a bite or two.
I'm gonna be able to pick, I want all the apple.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Any other public comments? Anybody here?
I was hoping that since we have fun here, we could talk about our urban growth area. Because you were talking about the industrial and additional building that's gonna be happening, I guess, which is in the urban reserve, all the way out to 63, so.
Well, and it'll start with Toledo Tel if they get annexed
So as
in.
we're consuming, we're seeing our urban growth about to be consumed. And I'd like to kind of understand what that would look like, or what that looks like for us to pursue growing that. Growing our urban growth area out to the, yeah.
So I believe that part of the motion tonight was to request that council investigate the full build out of the urban growth area and start to evaluate the capital facilities plans and those that could incorporate that look too. So I think that motion was probably inclusive of all of that, to ask council to direct staff to do some work to do that.
Great.
Basically. So I think that's it. The important thing there to remember is that you don't control, unless the county has given you zoning control over your urban growth areas, you don't control any permitting or any license in those urban growth areas. They are just growth areas that are on a map. The county is responsible for GMA planning, so they adopt what you all put forward your request for an urban growth area. And then the county considers that when they update their comprehensive planning, and they can adjust your urban growth boundaries to add or remove land. You don't regulate or issue permits or licenses or anything for your urban growth areas. Those are just future planning areas.
Right.
The county is still responsible for zoning and land use in those areas.
However, if they do allow us to annex those areas into our city limits prior to construction, which is what we'd like to do,
Right.
then now the commercial light industry that's showing out there, does that also include heavy retail?
There was talk of that at one point, but that kind of went away. They were talking about a little retail corridor.
Well, it'd be nice because, I mean, retail sales tax is one of a few revenue sources for a city.
Mhm.
And commercial development really doesn't lend itself to. It's great to have warehouses out there, but they don't really provide much revenue.
No, I don't.
But if there was a Target store out there,
Just like the one in Winlock, they got over 1 million square feet.
Yeah.
They don't do much at all because it's just storage.
One
That's
thing
right.
to talk about that is there is discussion of that urban growth area getting, and that I'm talking midpoint between the edge of our UGA or the rural.
Can you go over there and kind of?
But it's off the map.
On the map.
It's off the top of the map. So what they're talking about wanting our water and sewer. And I'm not
Right.
sure how interested I am in not, in adding that if it's not going to be part of our revenue. structure.
Exactly.
More than just the water and sewer aspect. So that is heading, we stop here. There's a couple, there's this property, and this property, and then there is the urban reserve that just goes this way, about most halfway to I-5. And then there's another urban reserve at I-5 that straddles the freeway. And Winlock is talking about wanting to annex or wanting to add that.
My understanding is they withdrew that application.
Did they? Okay,
Yeah,
good. Because I wasn't really
county
interested
said
in
no to
them
that.
crossing I-5. Yeah,
I think the county said no to that because they didn't have,
yeah, their urban, their UGA runs all the way to I-5 now. It's huge.
yeah.
It's bigger,
And I
it's
think the
twice the size of the
county-
city.
I think you have to.
You have to prove that you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't, and they already have too
Yeah.
much land that they don't need right now.
And this is good timing because, we have active development here. This is already developed and then talk of active development here, and that's the bulk of our urban growth. So this is a good time for us to
Evaluate.
moving the direction that we'd like to.
Which is what you all were
Yep.
chewing on earlier and saying, you need a plan for this. That's exactly what
Mhm.
they were suggesting.
Well, same thing with Leonard's out there.
That's what I was talking
That's the.
about. That's their urban reserve.
Urban reserve, and there's 400 acres. Out there, they want to
Mhm.
tap into our water and sewer, well, these are.
Now we're downhill, and Winlock is talking about wanting to tap into our sewer because we're downhill, and they are in a bind.
There's over
Well,
a foot.
A lot cheaper gravity fed than pumped.
I know, but there's only a footfall from the freeway to just to our water tanks right now.
That's not enough.
That's not enough. So they would require pumps. Then who maintains the pumps and services the pumps to make sure they're working all right for that development? You know, that's going to be huge.
Okay.
But it could also be a huge revenue for us.
Mhm.
And we're not even that, we're way below capacity. I mean, they pumped our thing up last year to max out. We did 9. Anyway, 9 of those big tanks last year. We're up to 6, I think, this year, and we'll do one more project for you. Get rid of it, but we can go above and beyond.
Wow.
We've already tested. For the capacity that's coming down the road, so we're in pretty good shape there. We might have to build another storage building, but that's way in the future for right now. But as far as taking on the liquids and stuff like that, we can do that. And Winlock's creek that they dump into is drying up. That's why they want to talk to us too. So come across the creek.
Anything else? I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Tom.
Oh,
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm always happy to
You
attend
guys?
these, but
Yeah.
just because of the nature of what I do, I like to
What was
make sure
that?
I'm invited to attend, and not just attending for
That was a-
attendance sake, but I'm happy to help out however I can,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, you're always welcome. I know your point of contact is Devin, but
Yeah.
consider it a standing invite.
Well,
yeah, no.
You know, like I said, my work comes with the food, so I like to make sure that you all
Absolutely.
are directing the work.
Absolutely.
But from what you're researching, there should be a part of the city code that has all those adopted fees and the references. So those all are part of a section in city code to look at what you have now as a
Yes.
baseline.
Yeah.
And then as you're going out, I believe the state building codes are all codified in state law. So
They're all UBC, aren't
if
they?
you've adopted the UBC by reference, which most communities have,
Yeah.
then you already have their baseline for collecting fees. And then how you choose to spend those is up to you.
Right.
Most of the time, communities don't look at permitting as a revenue generator. They only look at permitting as a way to offset the cost of staff. Because the staff that are there, you have to, and a lot of times planning, what I do is funded in part by the building